Good morning. Good morning and good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. We're going to let folks get settled in. Patrick, how is your week going?
Going good. Busy week. Avoided the hurricane, so doing all right.
That's right. You're coming out of San Diego. You're off to AGCIT this week as well, aren't you?
Yes. Flying out to Chicago right after this.
Flying out to Chicago. Great. Well, we are thrilled to have you on. We're going to give you an introduction here shortly. We're going to let folks get settled in. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. Let's go ahead and get started. Patrick, talking about an extremely interesting topic here. I can tell you last week I was at the CFMA, Construction Financial Management Association regional event in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Mm-hmm. And one of the topics that was on everyone's mind was automation, right? One of the things we heard as well from those economists there talking about kind of some of the trends that they're seeing is really the labor shortages is a big issue at the moment, not just in the field, but also in the back office. And so I think a lot of folks right now are very much, paying attention to what they can do to, it's not about replacing the teams they have, but fill the seats that they cannot fill, right? The roles that they
maximizing the use of their position. We've heard a lot of discussion. It's hard to get individuals hired right now who are just going to be doing data entry, just manipulating spreadsheets. So that's really where we've heard a lot of that automation come into play.
100%. So today, for those that are for our general contractor audience and friends, we're going to talk about 4 categories of automations that you should be thinking about in your business. Okay. If if you're interested at all in automations, or if this is something that's on your radar, really this kind of serves as an introduction to where to start. And kind of how to make use of this technology. My name is Ellis Talton. I'm part of the Early Brick team. Really work a lot with helping folks kind of get introduced into the Brick platform and taking them on their journey as they become a partner with us. Based in Santa Barbara, California. I'm very happy to be joined with, I believe, probably your debut on some of our Brick webinars, Patrick, with Patrick Sullivan, a senior solutions specialist at Brick. Pat, you want to give us a little introduction to yourself?
Yeah. Hey, everybody. Pat Sullivan. I'm on the solutions team here at Brick. I've been here for about 2.5 years now. Ellis actually originally hired me onto the team, but I'm originally coming from a general contractor out of the Boston area, sort of in like a systems accounting role. So sort of system maintenance support as part of a wider team, supporting the organization for all the financial systems, but a lot of work in spreadsheets, a lot of work in between systems. And that's what brought me to Brick. It really clicked and made a lot of sense sort of in relation to the way systems work in the industry. So great to see you all.
Awesome. Thanks, Pat. Yeah. And, one of the things I think that's interesting is that a lot of the automations we're going to talk about are things that you just kind of were doing. You were, responsible for doing at this large GC, right?
Yeah. Some of the manual efforts in Excel and sort of the putting the information together, getting it to the appropriate person in the business. I think today we'll be able to sort of talk about how some of those types of roles, just purely the data entry portion, the manual repeatable efforts, a lot of that stuff can really be automated with some of these tools.
Cool. Awesome. So before we kind of talk about some of these kind of workflows that we see being automated, let's talk about automation first, right? I think we hear this term a lot. What is automation? The simplest way that I can explain, that I like to explain what an automation is, and it's a bot. Essentially, it's a line of code. Very simply put, it's a set of instructions, right? And so we kind of give this piece of code life. We call that a bot. And what this bot does is it is programmed to go into any software that you own, most of the time your accounting system or your project management system, and it performs tasks on behalf of a human. So this could be anything from setting up a job to inputting an invoice, to inputting a change order, right? There's a lot of all these, think about all of these tasks to running a report that we do. It uses the front end interface, just like a human would. It logs into your system, right? Pat uses keystrokes and mouse clicks in that user interface. Very simply put, it's just a bot that does work for a human.
And I think what we've seen historically is there's a lot of software that's designed to take inputs from teams to capture data to store it in a system. When we talk about automation, we're talking more about software that, like Ellis, like you used to say, is specifically designed to use other software.
Yeah, 100%. So it's like, we envision a world where bots know where if you're a CFO or a controller, an AP clerk, you no longer ever have to log into your accounting system again, or your project management system. I know that sounds, kind of crazy to think about, but you are, with automation, there is software like Brick that is using your software on your behalf, right? So kind of an interesting way to think about that. So in effect, these bots become your digital assistants. And in a world where, we also talk to Pat, to a lot of companies that are growing right now. Depending on the market you're in, and regional, backlogs are really high. Look, you double the amount of work you take, you're also doubling the amount of invoices, right? You got to process, doubling the amount of pay apps you got to put together, right? Doubling the amount of projects you got to manage and manage costs on. So you need that back office.
A lot of the companies we talk to, they're focused on how can they grow without scaling that overhead as part of that growth. They want to be able to use these automations to keep the core team that they have in place, and use automations to facilitate a lot of the data entry that's associated with that growth.
Yeah, 100%. The other thing about automations that are really important is everyone kind of likes to think about analytics and dashboards, and those are great. The problem is, and you hear about garbage in, garbage out, and that is a real problem. One of the great things about automations is that they eliminate errors that typically happen in the course of a business process. So you want better data, start with an automated process that carries that data, right? So automation not only gets the information into the person in front of that person faster, but it ensures that your data is clean and accurate and consistent, so that down the line you can start doing some of those more interesting projects around analytics and even predictive analytics, right, Pat?
Yeah, and what we've seen just from a lot of discussions is a lot of the companies we talk to are very aware of the value of their data, of visualizing that data in different reports and different dashboards. But what we're focused on is really automating that underlying workflow so that you can ensure the uniformity, the accuracy, the timeliness of that information, so that when that information is eventually displayed in something like a dashboard, you can ensure that you're making the best decision possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And finally, another great kind of component to this equation is that automation is actually not that expensive these days, right? I mean, it's something that is highly scalable. So you can have literally, at Brick, we've done to date about 2 million transactions we've automated, right? At your business, you could have hundreds of these bots working for a fraction of the price of, an FTE, right? So go
ahead. These automations, they're running all the time. There's always going to be the need for human input and human judgment on exceptions and sort of the ways to manage processes. But these automations, they're entering invoices, they're processing all of this information pretty much around the clock.
Right, 24/7. They don't take, vacation, smoke breaks, although nobody smokes anymore. They work 24 round the clock. Okay, so we've kind of set the stage on these, right? What an automation is, it's a bot, goes in and does tasks for you. One of the other things that we're going to talk through too, Pat, is a lot of folks in the GC world, are obviously working in Excel. We've kind of built a tool, we call them workbooks, which automates the Excel experience. And we're going to look at some of that today. But automations can come in many forms, right? You can automate within your accounting system. You can also automate within these kind of workbook environments that are essentially automating the collection of data and the kind of the creation of these Excel files as well.
Yeah, so a lot of people we talk to, they're interested in using automations to input data into their software, like an AP invoice or setting up a project. But there's also the idea of being able to automate the creation and maintenance of these Excel formats. And obviously, Excel is a very popular tool. There's a lot of flexibility around it. You're able to consume data in a way that an ERP or potentially a PM solution might not offer sort of the flexibility for the way you run your business. So yep, absolutely. These automations, they're also able to create, distribute, maintain these spreadsheets so that people can get the information when they need it.
Yep, cool. Okay, so let's dig into it. 4 automation categories that you should focus on spinning up with this technology today. The first is around your projects. Okay, for general contractors that are maybe working with owner mandated systems, right? Or you've got an accounting system and a project management system, that where the workflow between those systems is very manual, particularly around change orders.
Yeah.
Another one we hear about too, Pat, job setup.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
estimate for budget. These are two to automate getting jobs set up in your accounting system, your project management system. I'll switch back to this to get your estimates turned into budgets. These are some great opportunities for automation. So Pat, walk us through what a job setup automation might look like, for example.
Yeah, so job setup as an example, typically most companies that we talk to, when they get awarded a project, there's some sort of project information sheet where there's going to be a lot of general information about that job number, contract value, what rates were awarded, where's the location, address, all those different items. So we basically want this information to be inputted one time, and then for an automation to go distribute and set that job up in all of the relevant systems, right? That might be an accounting system, a PM system. You might have to create some sort of internal folder file structure to maintain documents on maybe like a OneDrive. So the way it works with Brick is, again, you'd be able to input these values one time in a Brick workbook. We're going to store that data. We have an approval workflow. So if you need different individuals within the business to approve these things, we can absolutely do that. And then what teams are able to do is they can come over to our automation section. They're able to then, hey, go set this job up in Procore. The same way that we do it today. Again, we're mimicking human action. Go set this job up in Sage. Go set it up in Vista, whatever the ERP in mind is. The automation is going to run. It's going to complete that task. These could be manually triggered. They can be scheduled. It's really up to how the process needs to run efficiently for your business.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think one of the things, is like the great thing about kind of a job setup is that it's the very beginning of the job, right? I mean, this is a task that is highly repeatable. It's typically, we've spoken to some, companies, Pat, that are maybe setting up jobs, and they could be setting up jobs in 4 or 5 different places sometimes.
Oh yeah. Yep. And there might be different departments setting those jobs up due to the fact there might be discrepancies between certain values in different systems. There might be the need to sort of have conversations to make sure everything's reconciling. So you can ensure when you're using an automation that there's one central source of truth, and then that the bot is going to go and complete those exercises in all of the other systems.
Right. And again, this is something that this is not changing how your process today necessarily. What it does is it's just letting you do work in one place and letting all the manual data entry take place by these
maintaining that human aspect to the platform. Because obviously somebody's always going to have to fill out that job form. There's a relationship, there was a conversation, a deal was made, a project was awarded. That information gets entered, but then using the automation, you can get the data everywhere else that it needs to be.
Yeah, 100%. And I had a great question from Carla. Do we work with Foundation? Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. So Pat, walk us through some of the main kind of ERPs we come across, accounting systems we work with.
Yeah. So Brick is very flexible when it comes to connections, systems we're able to automate. This is just a short list of some of the more common ones we see, but Foundation, whether you're on premise, whether you're on the cloud, we're able to work with these systems. We've really developed a solution and a platform that is really dedicated to being able to connect to every solution that we're going to run into. So that's something that's very, very common for our teams to be able to find new systems, connect to those systems, automate those systems as well. So yeah, Foundation, absolutely.
Awesome. Yeah. Yeah, another one we hear a lot about turning estimates and budgets, owner mandated systems we hear a lot about too, right? So, you're working in Procore, you might have an owner that is working in eBuilder or maybe another Procore instance, and you're moving, your project manager is always looking at the screen and not eyes up on the job, moving change orders, submittals, RFIs, daily logs,
So
constantly.
there might be the need for your project teams to create change orders in your own project system, and then also update them in an owner system. If you're it's the same thing, subcontractors to GCs, but more on the GC side. What we typically see is you might have the need to maintain information in something like an e-builder if it's a federal job, or all these different types of solutions that are in place where, again, we want you to just maintain whatever that data is, change orders, requisitions, whatever that may be, one time in your own system. And then we're able to automate wherever else it needs to go.
Yeah. Okay. So project-based automations. This is something that every GC should be thinking about, ways to cut down on overhead. Okay. The other category that is really important and probably one of the most difficult to do is forecasting. How can I automate a forecast? We see so many companies that either have to spend tons of manual hours to put forecasts together, or they don't do them at all, or they don't do them frequently enough, right? So one of the things that automations can really help you do is automate the production and management of those forecasts. Talk us through a few of these examples.
Yeah, so a common story we hear is the need for teams to run reports out of their accounting system, put them in Excel, distribute those files to the project teams. Project teams make their inputs, whether it's an estimated cost to completion, pending change orders to get to a revised contract value. Either way, there's inputs required from the project teams. They'll make those inputs. They'll email them back to potentially the finance group or a project controls group. And then somebody actually has to go take that data and either manually transfer it onto something like a WIP or enter that data back into the ERP. So with our workflow solution, again, we want to connect everything. We're connected to the systems. We're bringing that data in. We want to be able to create these spreadsheets, use automations to write the data back into the system. And that's really where the Brick workflow engine comes into play. So what you're able to do is you kick off a workflow with the tool. It automatically creates a cost to complete, a general conditions forecast. It's going to create these templates automatically, and it's going to automatically distribute them to the appropriate project teams within the business. And you're really getting a place to manage that workflow. So who's overdue? Who's in progress? What's pending approval? Really gaining visibility into where's everybody at in that process. As an end user, as a project team, we make it really straightforward. You'll come in, I'll choose my federal renovation job. What you'll see is all of that relevant data from my accounting system, from my PM system. It's going to automatically load in and pre-populate these templates. And this is, Ellis, this is sort of what we were talking about earlier with the Excel automation. Again, we're a very personalized solution. This might look the way you do it today. It might not look the way you do it today. That's really the point, though, is we want to be able to personalize these templates to the way that your teams want to use these things and want to operate.
Right. And an automation, the creation of these workbooks is an automation in the sense that you're no longer running these, job cost reports and copying and pasting costs for each job. And then, you have an Excel file that you've copied over and, it's 8/1/23 created from 7/1/23. And, the effort of putting that information together should be eradicated using automations.
And there's also, on top of that, there's also the effort involved just from your project teams to be able to complete these exercises, right? These are teams dedicated to being on site and doing the construction aspect of things. So we wouldn't want them to spend too much time doing the actual, you want to spend time on the forecasting, but doing the maintenance and running reports, things like that. There's always going to be the idea of supplemental reporting when it comes to doing this. So whether you want a more detailed general conditions forecast for your GC codes, or maybe your project teams want to use a pivot table and drill into the underlying details, we don't want teams to have to go back into the accounting system and run a report to get supporting details for them to be able to do their forecast. We want to provide them with one central place where they can have all of the financial related data about their project with all the supplemental reporting needed and the ability to drill in and getting to the details so we can make it really easy for them to do what they need to do and move along with that exercise.
Right. So think about how you're forecasting at at the project level. Think about how you're forecasting your general conditions. We hear, from folks all the time, 95% of the time, if I'm over budget on a job, 95% of the time it's because it's from general conditions, right?
Yeah.
Revenue forecasting, automating the creation of projecting out backlog to go, hey, scenario planning. If I lose this job, if I win this job is delayed. What does my revenue look like in 6 months to a year?
Yep, absolutely. The ability to take values in this example, estimated contract value and fee for my opportunities, revenue and fee for my active projects. And like you were saying, the ability to create different scenarios for the business. So what does it look like for the business if we win all these projects? What does it look like if we don't win? What does it look like if a start date on an opportunity pushes or an end date on an active job pushes? The ability to actually use historical data. So in this example, I have opportunities for the business. I'm going after these jobs. I'm going after a K through 12 job here. I want to actually use my historical K through 12 data so that I can get a more accurate representation, use the Brick tool to reforecast out those values so that I can create those different scenarios, right? What does it look like for the business best case? What does it look like for the business worst case? And then if I want to come over and visually represent some of this data in a dashboard, this is readily available for me to do and go through those different scenarios.
Right. And think about the process of spreading contract values over a given time period, right? The manual process of doing that, very time consuming, right? So yes, you can also automate. You can automate job setup. You can also automate the process of spreading contract values over time, right? And then you can add intelligence around, your historical kind of fingerprint. How do K through 12 jobs that we've done in the past typically spread?
Yeah.
So forecasting is a huge opportunity for automation. It's a combination typically of bots and workbooks. Okay, so if you think about project automation, project automations, very much around kind of a combination of workbooks and bots. Forecasting, same thing, combination of workbooks and bots. Okay, so let's talk about another automation that is less challenging than forecasting, but one that forecasting depends on, and that is spend management, managing cost. The one that that comes up all the time, Patrick, around this invoice management. And for our general contractor friends, it might not be kind of your committed cost where there's a lot of challenges of running over budget. It's that uncommitted cost category, right? So like credit card.
If you're purchasing any materials for projects, maybe you have a self-perform arm, or maybe it's just those software invoices. If your project teams have credit cards and they're going out and spending money at Home Depot or on mileage or different things like that, it's the ability to also gain visibility into that information, make sure it's getting into your system in a more timely manner, so that when your project teams go do those cost reports and those forecasts, they can ensure they're looking at the most up-to-date information on the job.
Yeah, 100%. And spend management, there's a great opportunity, for reading an invoice, getting into your accounting system, being able to allocate costs more quickly, getting it into your job costs more quickly. Walk us through, Pat, some of the ways that we see companies automating the spend portion of the business.
Yeah, so I'd say 90 to 95% of the companies we talk to have some sort of AP at the business. Maybe it's AP at Talton Construction setup, so that they're receiving from their vendors all of those AP invoices into a centralized email inbox. So what Brick does is we'll actually reach into that inbox using an automation, and we'll pull those invoices right into the solution. So right off the bat, the advantage is you're probably getting these invoices all the time. You're getting them on the weekend, at lunch, while you're in a meeting, off hours. Brick's always consuming these invoices, and we're using an Amazon technology to automatically extract all of the relevant data off of these invoices. So at a high level, we want to eliminate the need for data entry of extracting data off an invoice, as well as typing it back into a software. We still know there's a lot of management of the AP process, right? There's a lot of caveats. There's a lot of reason for people to still be in the loop, but that's what we want to do. We want to take this AP process from data entry intensive to more of a management type of process. So as an example, I'll open up my Grainger invoice here. And what you'll see is that all of the header data, as well as all the line item detail, all this information is automatically extracted. We're actually training the system on your vendors. So the way, when I say training, Grainger calls invoice number in all capitals, but Ferguson or Whitecap or any of these other vendors, they might call it invoice # or invoice NO. There's different nomenclature. There's different formats. Brick is automatically going to extract all that data. And we're training the system so that every time I get a Grainger invoice going forward, all of that relevant information is automatically pulled off. From there, you have your approval workflow where teams are able to come in and make allocations. So I want to allocate the cost to projects or general ledger accounts. I might want to bulk allocate if I have an invoice that has a lot of line items. But ultimately, what we're doing is after we extract this data, it goes through that approval workflow. The necessary inputs are made. We're using our robotic process automation once again to go and enter that data back into the accounting system for you. So that is no longer a human exercise. There's no need for somebody to go in and make those additional keystrokes. We want to, again, take it to more of a management process where just the things that need to be adjusted are what are going to be adjusted.
Yeah, 100%. It's again, something that you're doing today, something that is highly repetitive. And look, you might have a team of excellent AP clerks. I mean, we have a customer that had, they were doing 6,000 invoices a month with 2 AP clerks. This company went from 6,000 to 8,000 invoices in about a year. And they had to hire 0 additional headcount to manage this, right?
And that's what we really like to emphasize is there's no way to fully automate the AP process. There's going to be humans in the loop. There's going to be exceptions, but the volume, the things that are the vendors that send in information the right way, that go through the system, we just want to eliminate that data entry portion of it. So your teams have that much more time back to deal with all those exceptions and scale accordingly.
Yeah. And again, one of the things that we see with the timeliness and accuracy piece is, look, your PM might be forecasting at a job and going, hey, look, yeah, we're overbilled on the job. We're looking good. Meanwhile, there's an invoice that's sitting, in someone's inbox, $25,000 has been processed in 30 days.
Yeah.
Turns out you're actually not overbilled on the job. You're underbilled, right? You're not where you were, where you thought you were.
And that leads right into the credit card side of things as well. So when you're looking at a cost report, if there's been a bunch of materials that were purchased just to maybe maintain the schedule on the job, somebody ran out to Home Depot and spent a bunch of money, but those credit card receipts haven't been processed yet because you might have to wait till the end of the month to receive a statement from your credit card provider. So what Brick does is we'll actually connect to your institution using a system called Plaid. Everybody's probably familiar with this if they've logged into sort of like a personal finance app or anything like that, but we're extracting all that data from the actual institution. These credit card transactions are flowing in. Your teams are then going to be able to, throughout the month, allocate the cost of those transactions to a project, to an overhead account, just so that visibility, again, is gained into what's being actually spent on the job outside of those commitments.
Yeah. Absolutely. Okay. Spend management, hugely important and ripe field for automation. If you do not have automations in your spend management process as a GC today, start thinking about it now. The last area that we see automations being used, we talked about the spend side. Let's talk about the billing side, getting paid. Pat, talk us through a little bit of how automations are being used in the billings side of the business.
No, absolutely. So there's a few components to this, right? Billing is definitely a human intensive exercise. There's the need to make
invoices together, you got change orders, you got to make sure everything's lined up. Yes.
A lot of things that can be automated is pulling the data from the system. So pulling your contract values, pulling your bill codes, your customer data. We know that a lot of different clients might require different formats of AIA, 702, 703. You might need to break out the change orders in different ways. We don't want that to have to occur within a system or for it to have to be this sort of custom reporting exercise every time. Brick is able to build out these different template catalogs for teams to choose from so that we can use a easy to use interface where teams are able to come in, make the inputs that they need to make on these invoices. We're flexible in the way you're able to do your billing. So whether that's percent complete, unit-based, calculated, bill for cost, locking down contract values, automating the rolling over of data. So what did I previously build? Automatically rolling those data points. One portion that I've seen that just can be really manual is the ability to compile these owner packages for the owner meeting, attaching backup, whether that's AP invoices, receipts, drawings, progress on the job, whatever that may be. So Brick provides the ability to come in and attach backup at the individual bill code level. And this is where it sort of becomes full circle, right? You might want to pull those AP invoices right out of the Brick AP module, assign those as backup on a line item to substantiate what you're billing for, and then being able to come in and actually automatically consolidate that package. The 702, the 703, any attached files, being able to consolidate that full package so that it's readily available for that meeting. That's a big portion of this when it comes to automation.
Right. And again, the thing about with automation here is again, these are things you're doing. That the big challenge becomes, you've got to pull all these individual invoices. And look, if the spend side of the business is not automated, it makes billings much, much harder, right? So there's a lot that you can do by automating spend that makes the billing side easier too.
Yep. If the invoices, if the accounts payable side isn't getting in fast enough, then you might have to delay sort of putting together that owner bill that might push out to another month. There's a lot of sort of downstream effects that we see in that regard.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So we're running up on time here. One of the things about automations is that they provide the connections to and from your applications. They're able to get data in, they're able to get data out. Right. I just want everyone to imagine a world where you have all four of these buckets automated in the business, all the way from how your projects get set up, how your budgets get set up, all the way through how you're planning for the business, thinking kind of 30, 60, 90 days ahead. If you can automate some of that work, how more accurately can you think ahead of in the business? Yeah. And on the spend and billing side, can I automate as much work here to put more attention to some of the more high value tasks in the forecasting category, perhaps, right? And really save on just the overhead and time in the spend and billings management process.
And so, something I think we like to emphasize is that we work with customers who are doing a lot of this stuff. They're doing these processes within the business. They've developed these complex workflows. And what we want to do is we really want to automate just the manual effort around those so that teams have time back to utilize that information, to plan better, to take proactive steps to mitigate a risk on a project, or to dig into the details on why maybe a corporate budget is going in the wrong direction, whatever those different areas may be.
Yeah. And one way to think about it is, when you build an automation like this, you should be thinking, I am going to save $100,000 by implementing this. This is typically what we see, right? Now, part of that comes from, as Patrick was mentioning, the saving on overhead hours, right? You could save 75% of somebody's salary, perhaps, right? That you need to hire, but you can maybe hire a piece of technology instead. What is the kind of the ROI on being able to plan in advance and stop fee erosion, right? That's where it becomes obviously a bit, more, less straight arrowed from a calculation perspective, but we see that to justify this, we see at least $100,000 on your return to do this.
And we're focused on working with customers who have the mindset that the right data in the right person's hands is going to lead to better decision making for the business at the end of the day. And what we see is that when things take a long time to put together, where that's a human effort, it takes a long time. By the time all that data gets put together, it might be outdated. So when you're automating this, you're getting information into the right stakeholder in the business's hands that much sooner. The ability to take that data and make a better decision, that's where the ROI is really going to lie within Brick.
100%. Well, look, thank you everyone for attending. We've run a little bit over schedule. Happy to take questions. If you have questions, after this and it sinks in, feel free to email Patrick or myself. I'll put our email addresses in here. And then you've got patrick@brick.com as well. We'd love to answer your questions, dive a little bit deeper into some of these automations if there's any interest there as well. We'll save folks some time back. Pat, I want to thank you so much for joining today.
Thanks, Alex. Appreciate it.
It was great to have you on, and want to thank everyone for joining and taking some time out of their morning and afternoon to chat workflow automation. So thank you everybody for attending. We hope to hear from you soon.
Thanks everyone.
Thanks everyone. Bye-bye.